In this section, we will discuss enabling Yum software repositories. The Yum repo list command will show enabled repositories. These are repositories that have been enabled through subscription management. I can add an all argument to this command, Yum repo list all, and I will see all repositories that are defined in the configuration files of these systems. On the right, I can see the status of those which are disabled versus enabled. I can use a Yum config manager with a -- enable option to enable one of these specific repositories. I simply give the repo ID from the first column, and it will display all of the parameters associated with that repository. It has also modified the configuration files for me to make sure that that repository is now enabled, as I can see with a repeat of Yum repo list all. Similarly, Yum-config manager with a disable option can disable a repository, again changing the configuration files. These configuration files are being stored in the etc yum.repos.d directory. The redhat.repo file was created through subscription management. Looking at the beginning of this file, each of the repositories is defined with a name in square brackets. They also must have a name parameter, which it tends to be a bit more descriptive, a location for where the repository is, and any other options that are required. The default is to enable a repository, so this line could be left out. When I use Yum config manager with a -- disable, it is changing this line to be an enabled equals 0. GPG checking is also enabled by default for all repositories. Again, this could be overwritten by changing this parameter inside of the configuration files. When we do check GPG signatures, we need a GPG key. The GPG key line is specifying where the key is to be imported. This is what allows Yum to prompt the user, do you want to import this key? Notice these files are local for their URLs. They've been placed on the system, in this case during the subscription process. Since this is a repository from subscription management, I also have SSL certificate and key information within this configuration file. Another method of getting a configuration file is to manually create one on the system or to be sent one from the administrator of your repository. For example, the other repo file inside of the etc yum.repos.d, rel_dvd.repo in my case, was provided for the classroom repository. It again has a short name in square brackets, has a base URL, and a name description. This particular repository does not have a GPG key set, so GPG check is set to 0. I also currently have this repository disabled. I can take this base URL that's specified and I can place it in a browser and see what is located at the location of this repository. Here Firefox is browsing that URL. The key subdirectory here that makes it a Yum repository is the repo data subdirectory. This subdirectory contains metadata or information about the repository itself, including information about what packages are included and where within this tree to find them. In our case, they're all under the packages subdirectory. Some repositories will place the packages directly in the parent, others will use one or more subdirectories. This particular content system has additional repositories. I can go up to a parent directory and I can browse for other repositories. For example, the RHT directory has a repo data and packages. There happens to only be one package in this repository, but it still has everything I need to be a Yum repository, and additional packages may be added at a later time. I can take this URL path and copy it. I can return to a command prompt, and I can use Yum-config manager with a --add-repo option and point it towards this URL. When I do that, it displays to the screen for me an appropriate stanza for creating and enabling this repository. It's also created a file in the etc yum repos.d directory with the name that it has pulled from that URL. That file has this same stanza in it. I could modify this file and give it a shorter name. I could adjust the name equals description line. I could also add information for GPG keys to this file. In my case, I don't have a GPG key for this repository, so I will add a GPG check equals 0 line to my configuration so that GPG checking does not occur for packages from this repository. A yum repo list will list this repository as one of the available and enabled repositories that I have. One additional method of obtaining yum configuration files and GPG keys is through packages. The Fedora project sponsors EPEL, extra packages for Enterprise Linux, and from their site I can obtain an RPM package which contains yum configuration files as well as the GPG keys for enabling this repository. I've downloaded that file already, and I can use yum install to install this package. Because I've not yet imported the key for this package, I may want to add the -- no GPG check option to my yum install command. I also could have added a -y option to automate the installation process. If I look now in my etc yum.repos.d directory, I have additional repo files, an epel.repo and also an epl-testing.repo. Looking at the epl.repo configuration file, the main repository is EPEL. It is enabled. This version has GPG check disabled. However, it would be easy to enable because they've already provided the GPG key information. The package installation also put this key in this local file so that yum can prompt and have the key imported. Instead of a direct URL to a repository, Fedora project uses mirror sites to host the EPEL repositories. So we have a mirror list, and yum would connect to that list site to get an appropriate mirror and eventually the repository of packages. If I take a look at this other directory where the keys are, the EPEL key has been provided as well and was provided by the RPM package that I installed. So there are a number of ways to enable repositories. If your system is registered or configuration files have already been provided, you can simply enable or disable repositories with yum config manager. If you know the URL of a repository, you can use yum config manager with the --add-repo option to generate a configuration file for you and then modify that as necessary. Finally, the administrators of the repository site may provide you with a package that you can install on your system to provide the yum repository configuration files and often also the GPG keys used for checking the signatures of packages.